I stood in that cold Seattle courtroom with my heart hammering against my ribs, watching Victor Kane's smug smile finally crack when the judge said the words I'd waited 6 months to hear. Mr.
Kane,
You are hereby ordered to vacate the property within 14 days and face criminal charges for the deliberate destruction of a registered historic landmark. The man who had systematically erased every trace of my father from the only home I'd ever known finally looked afraid. And in that moment, all the nights I'd cried alone, all the times my own mother had looked at me like I was the enemy, came rushing back. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 35 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed the worst thing that could happen to me was losing my father. I was wrong. The worst thing was watching a stranger move into the house my father built with his bare hands and turn my mother against me while he tore our family apart. Thomas Brooks wasn't just a carpenter. In Seattle's historic home circles, he was a legend. He founded Brooks Restorations in 1987 with nothing but a rusty toolbox and an old Ford truck. By the time I was born, he had restored more Queen and Craftsman bungalows than anyone else in the city. People said he could look at a rotting porch column and hear the original craftsman whispering how it was meant to stand. He taught me everything. From the time I was 7, weekends meant being on job sites with him, while other girls played with dolls. I learned to identify old-growth Douglas fir by scent alone. I could spot a load-bearing wall before I could ride a bike without training wheels. But our Real classroom was the garage, where a 1970 Chevelle SS sat waiting like a sleeping giant. That car was our bond. Every Saturday we'd disappear under its hood, grease up to our elbows, and talk about life. Dad would hand me a socket wrench and say, "Integrity isn't what people see, Elena. It's the bolts no one will ever know are there." The house on Queen and Hill was his masterpiece. A 1915 Craftsman bungalow he bought in 1997 when the neighborhood was still affordable for a working man. He spent 4 years restoring it himself, every evening, every weekend. I was right beside him, holding flashlights, learning to cut perfect miters, watching him bring dead wood back to life. The built-in china hutch in the dining room? We spent 3 months on that alone. The clawfoot tub upstairs he rescued and restored over an entire winter. And the height chart on the hallway doorframe. Every birthday from age 4 to 18. Dad's careful pencil marks and dates. That frame wasn't just wood. It was our family timeline. When I switched majors from architecture to software engineering,
Dad didn't flinch.
"Different tools," he said, helping me move into my first apartment. "Same principle. You're still building things that last." He left the house to me in his will. Not because I needed the money, but because he knew I understood what it meant. Then, 3 months ago, his heart stopped while he was mentoring a young apprentice on a foundation repair. 63 years old, strong as the timbers he loved, gone in a single breath. The funeral broke something in all of us. Mom, Claire Brooks, had been married to Dad for 37 years. After the service, the silence in that house became unbearable for her. That's where she met Victor Kane. Victor was 57, recently widowed, charming in that polished way that immediately set my teeth on edge. He showed up at grief group with perfect timing, perfect sympathy, and perfect stories about losing his wife to cancer. Within weeks, he was bringing lasagna to the house. Within months, he had a key. I tried to be happy for Mom. I really did. But something about Victor felt calculated. The way he moved through our kitchen like he already owned it. The way he ran his hand along Dad's hand-carved crown molding and said, "This old stuff must be exhausting to maintain." The first time he called it the property instead of your father's house, I should have known we were in trouble. Victor moved in faster than I thought possible. First weekends, then full-time. His modern leather furniture clashed violently with Dad's warm craftsman aesthetic. His giant flat-screen TV replaced the bookshelves we'd built together. His Peloton turned the sunroom into a home gym. Then the improvements began. I came home from work one Tuesday to find contractors ripping out the dining room hutch Dad and I had spent months perfecting. Victor stood there with a dust mask around his neck, smiling like he'd just done us a favor. Modernizing, he explained calmly. That old thing was a fire hazard and a dust collector. Your mother agreed. Mom stood behind him, not meeting my eyes. He's right. Honey, we need to move forward. That was the first fracture. The second came when they replaced the original hardwood in the master bedroom with cheap laminate. The third was the clawfoot tub, the one Dad restored board by board, torn out for a fiberglass shower for safety. Each change was wrapped in the language of progress, practicality, and increasing property value. But I knew what it really was: erasure. Victor's adult children made it worse. Tyler, a gym owner with zero personality beyond protein shakes, and Sophia, 8 months pregnant and weaponizing her baby bump like a shield. They treated the house like an investment property they were about to flip. When they started throwing away Dad's tools, his 1940s Stanley planes, his grandfather's German claw hammer, the Japanese saw he saved 6 months to buy, I lost it. I screamed. I begged Mom. But Victor had already rewritten the narrative. I was the bitter, ungrateful daughter who couldn't let her mother be happy. The social media campaign was masterful. Sophia posted daily, transformation reels, finally getting rid of this toxic old wood. Previous owner let this place fall apart. So grateful my dad is making our family home safe for baby. The comments poured in. People who never knew my father called him a hoarder. Called me entitled. Victor never posted himself. He just played the patient, long-suffering partner. Sighing at church, shaking his head sadly. We're trying to be understanding with Elena. Grief affects people differently. Then, the financial pressure started. Invoices for the new roof, new windows, electrical rewiring, all sent to me as the legal owner. $42,000. Then $57,000. Oregon no. Washington law had gray areas about improvements made with their residents' consent. Victor was building a case for sweat equity. The final blow came when I found the height chart doorframe in the dumpster. All those pencil marks, my entire childhood, tossed out like trash. I pulled it out crying, running my fingers over Dad's handwriting. And Victor found me there. Sentimental value doesn't pay the mortgage, he said with that calm, predatory smile. We're opening up the floor plan. That night, I sat in the storage unit with Dad's unfinished Chevelle, holding the doorframe, and realized this wasn't about the house anymore. It was war. Victor's psychological campaign was surgical. He turned my mother, my community, even some of Dad's old friends against me. I became the villain in my own story, the selfish daughter standing in the way of her widowed mother's happiness. Bills kept coming. Social media kept attacking. My boss pulled me aside after an anonymous tip about my mental state. I was drowning. Then came the certified letter. Victor was filing for a second-story addition that would completely destroy the home's historic character. Mom told me over the phone. Voice cold. Sophia needs space for the baby. Family helps family. Elena. That's when I knew I had to fight dirty or lose everything. I made one phone call that changed everything. Rebecca Caldwell didn't look like Seattle's most feared estate and preservation attorney. She was petite, silver-haired, wore cat sweaters. But when she opened my father's old files, her eyes turned to steel. Your father was brilliant, she said. He saw this coming. 5 years earlier, Dad had quietly filed for full historic landmark designation, not just the house, but every original architectural element. Any change required approval from the Seattle Landmarks Preservation Board. Victor had done none of it. Even better, Dad created an irrevocable preservation trust. I wasn't just the owner. I was the trustee. The house could never be sold or significantly altered without trust approval. And the co-trustee? Judge Raymond Whitaker, Dad's old client and close friend who had been quietly documenting every illegal change. Victor had spent 6 months building an ironclad case against himself. The confrontation in Rebecca's office was glorious. Victor walked in confident, lawyer in tow, Mom clutching his arm. Rebecca slid the thick folder across the table. Page after page. Photographs of illegal demolition. Restoration estimates now at $328,000. Criminal code violations. The hidden historical plaque Victor had removed and hidden in his garage. Then Judge Whitaker entered. He looked Victor dead in the eye. I watched Thomas Brooks spend 8 months matching grain on my library. You destroyed his life's work in 6 months for profit. You're finished. Victor's world collapsed in real time. Mom finally saw the before and after photos. She pulled away from him, whispering, "You told me it was just updates." The texts from Victor's phone were the killing blow. Messages to Tyler. "Once we break Elena, the house is ours." Messages about Mom. "The old lady is eating out of my hand." Mom stood up shaking. "You used my grief. You made me betray my daughter." The courtroom victory was absolute. Judge Evelyn Park delivered a scathing ruling. Full eviction. $328,000 restoration costs. $475,000 punitive damages. Permanent restraining order. And criminal referral for landmark destruction and elder exploitation. Victor was let out in handcuffs. Mom and I stood in the empty courtroom, finally face to face after months of pain. She cried harder than I'd ever seen. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I hugged her tight. "We're going to restore more than the house."
Mom.
"We're going to restore us." The restoration took exactly 6 months, the same time Victor had taken to destroy it. We worked side by side with Dad's old apprentice, Marcus. Every board we saved, every joint we repaired, was an act of love. We put the height chart doorframe back exactly where it belonged. Mom added a new mark, Elena, 35, tall enough to carry her father's legacy. The Chevelle roared back to life. When we drove it down Queen and Hill together, top down, sun setting through the new stained glass transom, I finally felt Dad's presence again. Not in the wood, not in the walls, in us. Victor thought he could erase my father's legacy and steal our home. Instead, he proved just how strong love and foresight really are. Some houses aren't just made of wood and stone. They're made of truth. And truth always outlasts greed.